So, an apartment renter in New York recently found an entire room behind her bathroom mirror and made a TikTok about it. The video went viral, and people were so freaked out by it, but some commenters said the apartment was similar to the one Ruthie Mae Mccoy was slain in back in the 80s. In that story, some creep snuck in through the medicine cabinet of this woman's bathroom and whacked her out. She tried to call the cops to tell them someone was breaking in, but they thought she was delusional, so they didn't check out the scene until 2 days later. Ruthie Mae Mccoy was a 52-year-old woman from Chicago, Illinois. She had a 25-year-old daughter, but lived by herself in a high-rise building that was a part of a public housing project known as ABLA. ABLA was made up of 4 different units, and of course, Ruthie lived in the most dangerous one. Her building was a 15-story brown-colored tower named the Grace Abbott Homes. She lived at the end of the hall on the 11th floor in apartment number 1109. So this building was super sketchy. The elevators were always malfunctioning, the stairwells had no lights on, and basically all of her neighbors were on hardcore substances. Okay, this sounds like my worst nightmare. Janky elevators and dim hallways are never a good sign. At 8:45 on the night of April 22nd, 1987, the police received a 911 call from Ruthie. She told the dispatcher someone was trying to break in. She said they throwed the cabinet down and they want to come through the bathroom. The dispatcher was pretty confused by this, but got Ruthie's address and said the cops would head her way. The dispatcher notified an officer and described the incident as a disturbance with a neighbor. That's a lot different than a break-in. A disturbance with a neighbor would be like a barking dog complaint or something, not someone trying to break in through a woman's bathroom. At 9:02, the police received another call. This time, it was from a woman who lived in Ruthie's building. She said she was walking down the hallway and heard the sound of bullets coming from Ruthie's apartment. 2 minutes later, another neighbor called the cops to report the same sound. This neighbor also mentioned hearing shouting. At that point, the first police officer hadn't made it to Ruthie's place yet, but the dispatcher sent 2 more cop cars. At 9:10, 4 officers knocked on Ruthie's door. There was no answer. That's not a good sign. The officers asked the dispatcher to call Ruthie back. They heard her phone ring from inside the apartment, but no one answered. They were able to get the key to her apartment, but I guess it wasn't really the key to her apartment because it didn't work on the door. At this point, the cops just left. What? Ruthie was clearly just taken out with bullets and they left her there. The cops said they left because they didn't think the situation was bad enough for them to bust down her door. They apparently talked to some of her other neighbors who didn't mention hearing any weird noises. They also get a bunch of prank calls like this from people in the area, so they assumed that was the case and just left the scene. I don't get this at all. The woman called saying someone was trying to break in. Other people in the halls reported hearing a struggle coming from her apartment, and now she's not answering her phone or the door. It definitely sounds like someone broke in and whacked her out. And how do we know those neighbors weren't just saying they didn't hear anything to steer clear of the cops? Because some of her other neighbors did call to report hearing bullets. So that next evening, a woman named Deborah called the police saying Ruthie hadn't stopped by her apartment as she usually does each day. Officers were sent back out to her apartment where Ruthie didn't answer any of their knocks or phone calls. Some of the policemen wanted to break down the door, but the security guard told them not to because Ruthie might sue them if they did. That is, if she's even alive at this point. Well, the police left again. Okay, I thought it was bad enough they left the first time, but now they're leaving again? I'm starting to think the only way they'll get to Ruthie is if it starts to smell like a corpse in the hallway. Honestly, I don't even know if they'll break in then. Actually, she was discovered 1 day later, but it wasn't by the police. At 1 in the afternoon, Deborah called the building manager saying she was scared Ruthie may have been terminated in her apartment. One of the building officials showed up at her apartment with a carpenter who drilled through the lock and opened the door. They walked in to find Ruthie lying lifeless in a pool of fluid. She was on her side with her hand covering her chest. She weirdly had one shoe on and one shoe off, and there was a bunch of stuff thrown around her apartment. Police officers arrived at the scene and finally entered Ruthie's apartment. About time! And I wonder if Ruthie would have been alive if they had busted it on their first visit and rushed her to the hospital. I just hope she didn't suffer for too long while the cops were standing outside of her door acting all helpless. Like, isn't it their job to troubleshoot these kinds of things? Anyway, the police got there, and when they turned Ruthie's body over, the smell of rotting flesh filled the room. Hey, I kinda called that one. And the cops high-key deserved the bad smell for all they put Ruthie through. Medical examiners performed an autopsy on Ruthie and determined she had been hit with 4 bullets. The examiner concluded she passed away from internal hemorrhaging, but it didn't happen immediately. This is so annoying. She literally called about the people breaking in, was brushed off by the dispatcher, and then left high and dry by the officers 2 times. The examiner did mention that he didn't think Ruthie would have made it even if she was rushed to the hospital. But they definitely could have just said that to make the officers feel better. Let's go back to the crime scene. When investigators searched Ruthie's apartment, they only found 1 bullet casing, and the place had already been wiped clean of fingerprints. So whoever did this tried to clean up a bit. Officials then determined a few of her belongings were missing: her phone, TV, and rocking chair. What? They also thought some of her money might have been stolen because there were coins scattered around her place. So if her phone was stolen and the cops heard it ring when they came to her door, that means her attackers were either still there or they came back to snatch her phone. But of course, we don't know because they never got into her apartment that night. Don't you love that? Detectives eventually determined the intruder had removed the medicine cabinet in the apartment next to Ruthie's and climbed through the pipe chase. A pipe chase is basically a 2 to 3 foot fake wall between the medicine cabinets of 2 apartments that's used to hide pipes and bad guys. So the perp broke in through the cabinet next door, climbed through the wall gap, and busted down Ruthie's cabinet to get into her apartment. Yo, this whole thing has me so shook. Like, I had no idea people could break in this way, but apparently medicine cabinet break-ins were common in this building because no one was really freaked out about it. I can't believe I didn't know about any of this until today, and now I'm second guessing every bathroom I've ever gone into. How do I know there isn't someone lurking behind the mirror? 4 out of the 10 units on each floor have connected medicine cabinets, so if the neighboring apartment is vacant, it's a huge target for bad guys. Well, that just seems like a flaw in the system. Like, why was the complex built this way to begin with? It was literally constructed for people to break in whenever they felt like it. But the weird thing about Ruthie's bathroom invasion is her medicine cabinet door was never found. Officials weren't even sure if it was there to begin with, because Ruthie's daughter mentioned someone had broken in through her mom's cabinet 1 year earlier. Stop. This poor woman had to go through this mess twice? Well, I guess she didn't really have to go through it the second time since she didn't survive, but you get what I'm saying. So what would make someone want to target Ruthie? Some of the people in her building thought she was a little cray-cray. She would cuss at random strangers, dressed a bit funky, and had a few run-ins with her neighbors. When she first moved into the building, Ruthie did not vibe with the woman living next door. The 2 neighbors got in quite a few arguments where the cops sometimes had to intervene. Ruthie was also super paranoid. Like, she always thought she was gonna get mugged or robbed. Her paranoia was so intense, she made the building management change her locks twice and would often run around the building and street making sure everyone's doors and cars were locked. But based on the way she was slain, I don't blame her for being freaked out. I have a really weird fear of stickers. I had a bad experience as a kid. Ruthie also suffered from mental illness and lived alone, which wasn't a good combination. She got to the point where she was so lonely, she stopped eating regularly and displayed peculiar behavior. According to her neighbors, Ruthie would wear a big winter jacket and several pairs of pants in the summer. And in the winter, her neighbors would catch her making snow angels on the ground. Okay, wearing a bunch of clothes in the summer is odd, but the snow angel thing isn't. I'm guessing her neighbors just thought it was strange because of her age, but hey, maybe she was just young at heart. In September of 1986, Ruthie went to the Mount Sinai psychiatric facility on her own accord, where she was diagnosed with mild schizophrenia. Since Ruthie never finished school, she decided to enroll in the GED courses they offered at Mount Sinai. All of Ruthie's teachers and classmates said she was assertive and opinionated, but very well liked. After she started going to Mount Sinai, Ruthie's neighbors noticed a big shift in her appearance and personality. She started dressing nice, smiling at her neighbors, and was just a more pleasant person to be around overall. So Ruthie was getting disability checks from the government, and in September 1986, the Mount Sinai staff helped her apply for more money each month. Her request was approved, but the whole process took a while, so her first check didn't come until February, about 5 months after she initially applied. Because of the delay, her first check was super big because it included her retroactive pay for the previous months. A big hunk of money could definitely be a reason for someone wanting to break in. Ruthie's check was right around $2,000, and she planned to use that money to move out and find a nicer place to live. You mean she didn't want to live in a place where people could just sneak through her bathroom whenever they wanted? Weird. A few people found out about Ruthie's big check and started hitting her up. Most of the people were pastors and ministers too. Some of them asked for money as a donation. One minister asked her for a lump of money in exchange for water from the Jordan River, and one sent her a sacred anointed piece of wood that she was supposed to do some weird ritual with and return it back to him in the mail with a donation. Dang, those preachers are wrong for that. And did they want a spot at the Lord's house? Because with that behavior, it seems like they'd be knocking on Satan's door. Ruthie's daughter knew all of these people were trying to scam her mom for money, but Ruthie sent them her dough anyway. In her defense, she was just probably trying to make sure she was on the Lord's good side. So even though these money-hungry church officials were housing Ruthie for her money, they weren't the ones who broke in. I would hope not. That would be such a scandal if a pastor was the one who did it. Like, those people are known for going up to front doors, not through bathroom mirrors. So if it wasn't one of the scammy pastors, then who did this to Ruthie? The cops were actually tipped off about 2 suspects by a dude named Tim who lived in the building. Tim was staying in apartment number 1108, aka the one right next to Ruthie's that the perps broke in through. He wasn't actually on the lease, but it was pretty common for people to sublet their units to other people under the table. Shady. The day of the crime, Tim claimed he was at apartment number 1108 with 4 friends: Ronald, Corey, Edward, and John. That day, Ronald showed John the whole medicine cabinet passageway before he left with Corey. So now it's just Tim, Edward, and John in the apartment. And John just found out about a cool new entry to the crazy lady's apartment. That evening, Tim said he saw Edward and John break in through the bathroom and then run out of Ruthie's apartment with her TV and rocking chair. They reportedly came back a few hours later to clean up the scene and snatch Ruthie's phone. I totally get stealing a TV and a phone, but a rocking chair? Yeah, that's not suspicious at all. Don't mind me just running through the hallway with a full-size rocking chair. Look away, everyone. The rocking chair and TV were later recovered by the police, who confirmed them as Ruthie's. And with that, Edward and John were arrested for the crime. Okay, but how do we know that Tim isn't involved in the crime too? Like, he was the only other witness there, so he could have made it all up to cover himself and ratted out his 2 accomplices. Actually, the police kind of thought the same thing, because Tim kept switching up his story. At first, he tried to say that he wasn't even there when it happened, and at the trial, he changed his testimony again. The thing that sucks about this case is there wasn't really any physical evidence, so Tim's wishy-washy testimony is all the jury really had to go off of. At court, Tim said Ronald was the one who did it. What? Yeah. He claimed Edward was sitting on the couch in number 1108 the whole time. Dude, make up your mind. Who did it? Edward's girlfriend testified and said her boyfriend came home that night and bragged to her about whacking someone out with bullets. But Edward claimed he was just saying that for the clout, but didn't actually mean it. Tim's girlfriend said Edward and John came to her door at 2 a.m. in the morning after the crime to try and leave the rocking chair and TV at her place, but she didn't let them. John's girlfriend took the stand and said said the men came to her apartment at 3:30 a.m. and asked to leave the items at her apartment. She didn't think much of it and was probably so confused and sleepy, so she said yes. Who just goes up to someone's door at 3:30 in the morning to ask them to babysit their stolen rocking chair? That's so strange. Edward then told his story to the jury. He said he was in apartment number 1108 when he heard bullets being fired and ran down to the lobby to see what was going on. But Edward was trying to make it seem like John did it alone because he claimed John didn't run into the lobby until 30 minutes later. Then Edward claimed he was in the hallway at 2 a.m. when he saw someone coming out of Ruthie's apartment with a rocking chair. This person allegedly asked him to help grab some of the items. Edward noticed Ruthie's door was cracked open, so he peeked in and saw her body. But I guess he wasn't fazed by it because after that, he helped the guy carry the TV.
What?
Bro, if you're gonna lie, at least make the story believable. Like, how are you gonna say you saw a corpse in an apartment and didn't do anything about it? And way to put your friend on blast for the crime. I bet John wasn't happy about that. In the end, there wasn't enough evidence or consistent testimonies for the jury to send Edward and John to jail. They were both found not guilty and went about their rocking chair stealing lives. We still don't know for sure if they're the perps who did this to Ruthie, but I have a feeling those two dudes were definitely involved. Oh, and get this. Ruthie's story is believed to have inspired the movie Candyman. You know, the one about the sketchy man who shows up when you say his name 5 times in front of a mirror? Yeah, that one. Yo, I do not mess with mirrors. They've always creeped me out. And Ruthie's execution was definitely a horror movie in the making. Like, I knew this story was gonna be bad when I found out about the elevators and lights in the building were wonky. But honestly, I never expected it to end with a bathroom mirror break-in. That's a new one. I think it's so tragic that Ruthie was paranoid about someone breaking in, and that's how she was slain. And to think she was just about to move out of that place before all of that happened. On that note, I think I'm just gonna eat this Dutch pancake and then go check my bathroom for intruders. You should probably do the same. Stay safe out there.